You know, we come to think in terms of Martin and the movement. And we really come to think about the past, but not for the sake of the past. We come to think about the past because of what the future can be and what using the past meaningfully has brought us, right? We come knowing that who we are right now, whoever you are in America, has really come down to how you acted and reacted to the civil rights movement. I don't care who you are, black, white, yellow, pink, or polka dot, all that's nonsense, all right? Is that because it was so powerful, had such an impact on everything in America, that it became the singular, significant people's movement in American history. Others came down to it but couldn't complete their work until the work of racism really was tied into it and begun to be completed. All right? Is that we have to understand the importance of this moment. Martin King is not an accident on the Mall in Washington, D.C. And isn't it interesting that the only monument there that's not a president will be the prophet of our age? As a preacher, you know that mostly, right? But the idea is that you have to understand is if it wasn't for Martin, everything they'd worked for before would end in destruction. And if it wasn't for Martin, this nation could not speak with its head up to the rest of the world that's three-fourths black, dark to black, all right? Is that we are here celebrating that act, that time, that period, that man. See, there was an American world before Martin, but really it was a mean, cruel, ugly, and distorted world. Huh? Is that it made promises that it never intended to keep in its heart, couldn't even put on paper. It made promises that was forced on it by half of the nation, that was involved in hate that was opposite of what this nation said to everybody abroad. Is that when we look at it, is that millions of people in this country were allowed to feel superior in order to make other people feel inferior. Huh? Is that every institution in American life was used to damage and destroy and derange the minds, the will, and the psyche of people who were non-white. And I say people that are non-white, those that left outside. And the darker, however, they were, the greater their misuse in this nation. Is that there was an artificial limits that were placed on the dreams and the hopes of you for no other reason than color, no other reason than poverty. Poverty made clear because of your race. Is that we have to look back in order to look forward. We have to look back to see where we've come from. We have to look back in order to understand the meaning of our struggle and who we really are, that we could struggle well enough to come to those kind of conclusions and understandings. In fact, if you were black a few years ago, you had no reason to believe. We had to believe in spite of. But we had no reason to believe that we or our children or our children's children were ever going to be able to be outside, say inside. We never knew it. We had to work like it was going to happen. Huh? Is it we had to dream like it was going to happen in spite of. We did not live in America because of. We lived in America and recreated America in spite of America, not because of it. All right? Is that you have to understand the condition before to understand the situation now and why we must keep on struggling. Is that for over a half century in this country, the major humor, the daily humor, the organized, professional humor was blackface comedy. Organized to debase and belittle and distort the image of black people in the country. And every election, particularly in the South, if you were elected in the South, you were elected by out-niggering the opposition, the putting down, the destroying of. And you know what happened? In spite of it, we made a movement. But what was so horrible about it, they did it in the name of the land of the free and the home of the brave. Is that once you begin to understand that, then we can begin to understand where we are now. Is it because what came in between what was then and what is now is basically one man. That was Martin Luther King Jr. I remember being in jail in Jackson, Mississippi. I tell people this all the time, so some of you may have heard it, but it stays in my mind, right? Is that I was in jail in Jackson, Mississippi, and I had put a book in my pocket by Lerone Bennett, The Negro Mood. We were Negroes then. And so I took it out, and I started reading it, and what Lerone said is that that really the tragedy was, and what we had to overcome, and the dilemma of African American life was this. He said that if we struggle, if we fought back physically against that which we knew in our minds we should, but knew that we would be killed if we did, if you fought back, you would be destroyed physically. But if we didn't, we would be destroyed morally and spiritually. It was the dilemma. Martin King comes, right? And the world begins to change because, you see, we didn't have a method to fight back. Martin King brought us a method, a means, and he became the man and was big enough and powerful enough in order to make it real, and we won without shooting a gun, without creating hate, without dropping our shortcomings on other people. All right? Is that the greatness of Martin? Is that Martin came and it changed it. And when we look at it, it was this process of turning the world upside down to turn it right side up. Martin understood that somehow he understood that the means that America had always used against us was due to die. And for us to only imitate what was would end up in all of us dying. That somewhere along the line, somebody had to stop the hate. Somebody had to stop the violence. Somebody had to have enough sense, just plain sense. Doesn't have to be a genius to understand what he understood, that violence creates more problems than it solves. Is that who could understand that as more than some sermon on a Sunday morning, right? Or something that you use to get off the emotion, right? Who can understand it so well that you die with it in the streets of a land that promises and never produces, all right? How could you do that? But it turned it around. He had it. And that movement by Martin helped us free ourselves and free others. See, this is the important part of it. It made demands on the most powerful nation in the world and made it say yes when it wanted to say no. Is that, how do you do that? But when you can do it, it makes you feel good. And the point is that here we were at the bottom of the American ladder. Nobody wanted to be us. In a few short years, everybody wanted to be a part of the movement we were a part of, because your dignity and your sense of decency was decided by where you stood on the issue of race and racism. What a powerful understanding we come to celebrate, all right? Is that, you see, and Martin taught us how to do that. Martin taught us how to do that. One man taught us how to do that.